Welcome to all the young bright minds and the future of this nation to another edition of Jnana Gangotri's Astra. We have done a video regarding Astra Mains Test Series, but this video is going to be exclusively about Mains Answer Writing. My name is Prakash Naik and this video is dedicated only to provide you certain parameters as to how a Mains answer has to be written. We understand that the video is in English, and in future I just want to ascertain one thing, that there is going to be another video which is going to be complete translation of whatever has been discussed in this video, and we are going to also launch another video which is completely aimed at providing directives. Like for example, there are various questions which are providing like discuss, evaluate, analyze, and many such activities. How many such words are there, directive words are there. So one video will be there exclusively in English, and the entire version, whatever has been discussed in English, a Kannada version will also be launched. So this is completely aimed at UPSC aspirants along with the English medium KPSC aspirants also. Okay, so I want to again repeat that this is a objective, or the objective of this video is to make sure that you understand there are certain parameters or certain rules to be followed while writing a mains answer, right? For example, as soon as you go into the examination hall, you'll be provided with the question paper, and the first thing any aspirant would do is to go through all the questions which are there or not, right? And you will try to mark which are the familiar questions or familiar topics to you, right? So that is the first thing you do, and once you are familiar, once you actually make a note of it, then you start writing answer. But the first thing you do is you go through the question, you read the question, you try to understand and formulate or devise a structure, right? So this video is completely aimed at making you understand that what are the things you need to do before writing answer, that is while reading the question, that is first phase. Second, right, before writing your answer, what are the things you need to keep in mind, what are the homework, what are the activities you need to do, and third, what you need to do while writing your answer, and ultimately before concluding your answers, what are the things you need to keep in mind, like for which sort of questions a way forward is required, for which sort of a question a compulsory conclusion is required. That sort of details will be provided to you in these videos. Okay, moving further, right, as I said, there are certain parameters or certain rules one need to follow while writing answers, right? Suppose the first is like we have a pre-answering period, right? So this is a period when you just go through the question, you try to read the question, try to understand it, understand the demand of the question, right? And formulate a skeletal structure of your answer. So what are the things you need to do? Suppose we'll take one question, right? So like for example, why is Indus Valley civilization is considered to be the earliest? Why is Indus Valley civilization is considered to be the earliest urban culture in India, right? And second, the continuation of that question is differentiate between Indus Valley civilization and the Vedic culture. This is a 15-mark question, right? Now, what are the things you need to do? As I said, follow a technique, follow a parameter, right? First and foremost, you have to identify the key terms in the question and try to identify how many subparts are there. Suppose the first and foremost thing anyone should do while reading a question is identify the key terms. Now, what are the key terms here? The key terms is Indus Valley civilization is a key term, right? And we also have Vedic civilization. So definitely the question is focusing on Indus Valley civilization and the Vedic civilization, right? Now you got the pointers, you got the direction as to which topic we are going to discuss about. And again another key term is, why is it called as the urban culture, right? So urban culture of India. Many of the students make a mistake while identifying the key terms only. They'll only go through certain key terms such as urban culture of Indus Valley civilization, and as soon as they go through this key term, they'll start writing answer. You need to understand the question. The first phase is you have identified the key terms, that is fine. Okay, now identify how many subparts are there. There are two subparts are there. First is why it is called the earliest known urban civilization or the culture in India. This is the first part, starting from here to here. Okay, and second is differentiate between Indus Valley civilization and Vedic civilization or Vedic culture. So you need to identify how many subparts are there. The question is having two subparts. So you have identified the key terms, then you have also identified how many subparts are there. Now it is a crucial time that you need to apportion appropriate weightage to each and every subpart of the given question. For example, we have 2 subparts here. Now on the face of it, it appears to be like 50-50 ratio has to be given, 50-50 weightage has to be given to the 2 parts, but on the contrary, this consists, the second part consists lot of content, so therefore a little bit more of percent weightage has to be given, like for example 55% and this is 45%, or maybe 40-60 is also going to be suffice. The first part of the question requires 40% of the weightage and second part of the question requires 60% of the weightage of your entire body. This is excluding your introduction and conclusion. Okay, it does not include your introduction. Done. So second is you have apportioned appropriate weightage, and some question may be even 3 parts. For example, there is a question which is talking about genetic engineered crops. So the question is, what is meant by genetic engineering crops? What are genetic engineering crops? Second, what are the issues associated with the genetic engineering crops? Third, what are the actions taken by Government of India to mitigate any sort of possible problem issue rising out of the genetically engineering crops. So the question is having 3 parts, right? So in such a condition, you need to understand how much of weightage should be given. First is the definitional part, which requires only 20% of the weightage, whereas the other 2 parts are the main core demand or the body of the answer, which requires 40-40 weightage. So giving appropriate weightage is also very crucial in making in writing a very balanced answer, right? So this is happening before you are starting your answer, right? Before you begin your answer writing. Okay. Next, focus on the directive words. So directive words means what is the focus of the question. Now this is simple. Why, what, how sort of a question, but there are so many other questions which ask you to critically evaluate, critically discuss, critically analyze, enumerate, or like for example describe. So there are various directives, for example examine, discuss, critically. So you need to understand what is the importance of such a directive and what does the question demand out of this question or demand out of you, right? So once you understand this directive, it will be easy for you to actually devise a structure in such a way that it is going to address the demand of the question and the demand of the directive words. So next is you need to follow a directive word, identify the key terms, right? Identify the subparts. 2. Third, focus on providing appropriate weightage to each and every subpart. 4th, focusing on the directive words. Now understand the holistic demand of the question, right, by linking all the various key terms, right? What is the core demand of the given question, right? In parts also or in totality also, you need to understand what is the perspective of an examiner, what an examiner is asking out of you, right? Now if you look at this question, right, as we have discussed about the key terms, industrial civilization, the urban culture and the differentiation. Second part is pretty much clear that you need to clearly differentiate between industrial civilization and the Vedic civilization based on various things. For example, their social life, for example, their economic activities, for example, their political organization if there was any, and for example, the sort of weapons used or the utensils used or the sort of dress used, various activities. It can be easily categorized. But the challenge comes in the first part, where the question is about why it is considered to be the earliest urban culture in India. Why it is the earliest urban culture? They are not referring to any other civilization, contemporary civilization of Indus Valley civilization or the Harappan civilization across the world. There were so many other contemporary civilizations, like we had Mesopotamia, we had this Nile, or the Egyptian civilization, we had Chinese civilization, we had Akkadian civilization. The question is exclusively confined to India. So therefore, if you are making an answer that giving a reference about the contemporary world, then you are going to be wrong. Okay, first. Second, the question is not asking you to write the features of urban civilization, urban culture of Indus Valley civilization. It is only saying that given the different parts in India, we had southern part, northwestern part, central part of India, and the Sindhu Saraswati valleys of the Harappan and the Mohenjo-daro or Harappan civilization, in compared to other regions of India, at that point of time, given the time period, it was the earliest known urban culture. So it is a comparative question. So you should have a clear idea as to what was happening in other parts of India. And for example, in South India, they were like megalithic builders, and their construction was mostly confined to rural areas. Houses were simply built, and there is no concept of urban civilization or urban culture, or township planning was completely absent vis-a-vis the Indus Valley civilization. That is how you need to address. That is called as a demand of the understanding the demand of the question. Once you understand the demand, then you know that you talk about, first you take the urban features. What are the urban features? You talk about lifestyle, like materialistic and non-materialistic. Materialistic means, for example, what are the dress they were wearing, right? So their social life, and the use of seals, terracotta seals, use of pottery, what sort of potteries were used, and weights and measures. So these are the materials, and non-materials is their lifestyles, right? And you talk about the elaborate urban town planning with citadel and lower house, lower town. Then we had this grid pattern. Then we also had this great bath, grid runways. So many. We had so many sites, Ropar, Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Dolavera, Kalibangan. So all these were the urban centers. That is how you take certain features of urban areas and compare it to other parts of India. That is what the demand of question. So this is the most crucial part, because to understand the core demand, this first 3-4 phase is very much crucial for you to understand. Identifying the key terms, right, subparts, apportioning weightage, understanding the directives, then you have a clear idea as to what is the demand of the question. Now this is a pre-answer writing phase, which is very crucial, because if you don't understand, if you're in a hurry-burry and you tend to just partially read the question, you jump onto the conclusion, you may end up writing completely a different answer altogether. So please understand, this is a crucial period also, and this is a crucial input. You can spend almost like 1.5 minutes in identifying the understanding the demand of the question or devising a structure. Then you can write your answer in the next 5-6 minutes also, right? So next, identifying what are the means and what are the ends of or a focus or a direction of a given question. For example, given this question, right, what are the means here? So the means are the implements of urban culture. So what are the implements used in the urban civilization of Harappans? So those are the tools, those are the means, but the ultimate objective is to identify why is it considered to be the ancient urban culture of India. So that is the direction, that is the focus, those are the ends. So using certain tools, using these tools, you derive at a conclusion. This is the conclusion. Conclusion is your end, and using certain tools is your means. Understand what are the means, what are the ends. You always have to use the means to arrive at a particular conclusion or a particular to end. That is most important. If you understand this, it is going to be easy for you, right? Okay, moving on to the next part. So this is what we have discussed so far, is like before writing an answer, the moment you look at the question, you identify the key terms, underline that or box it, then you identify subparts, give appropriate weightage to it, understand the directive words, understand the demand of the question, know what are the means, what are the tools, then what are the means, what are the ends. It will be going to be easy for you. Now after that, what you're supposed to do, you have to devise a skeletal structure of your answer, because structure is most important. If at all you don't know what is to be written in introduction, how many body parts are there, like given in the previous question we're going to discuss about. First in introduction, so how the structure is going to be, structure is nothing but the skeletal structure. This is intro, then we have body 1, okay, so this is body 1, next we have body 2, then we have conclusion. Okay, this is a typical, or in a crude form, this is a structure, right? So in structure, now you know what to introduce, how to introduce. There are many ways of introducing. You either talk about what is Indus Valley civilization, because there are two core terms, that is IVC and VC. You talk about both. That is one way of introduction. Second, you talk about, because these are the means. End is, or like urban culture is also one of the core term. You talk about certain features of urban culture. Right, and you talk about either the time period or some differential aspect of, because the second part of the question also talks about the differentiation. You can talk about in brief about the differential aspect of Indus Valley civilization or the Vedic culture, right? So the time period means, for example, the Indus Valley civilization, the time is between 3300 BC to 1300 BC, and the Vedic civilization, it is 1500 to 600 BC, in which the mature phase is 2900 to 1600 BC, right? 1900 BC. You can write this. So you can introduce in any way. You will now identify which is the most appropriate way for you to introduce in given these options. So in this, for example, I can talk about this. I'm going to choose this as an introduction, right? In body 1, what is the focus? Why? So you use the subheading, whatever the focus of this, we have actually deciphered in the previous part. So why this is called as the earliest urban culture in contemporary India. This is the focus of your body 1, right? Second, differentiation. So differentiation between the Indus Valley civilization and the Vedic civilization, you can write either by making 2 columns, Indus Valley civilization, Vedic civilization, and you talk about features here, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, how many features, whatsoever features are there, you can write down all these features this side, and you compare it with Indus Valley vis-a-vis with the Vedic civilization. This is one way of presenting an answer, but this is a part of your structure. Hopefully you understand what is the structure is, and structure is nothing but a skeletal framework as to which is the best framework it has to be devised given the demand of the question. For this demand of the question, we have 2 body parts, and we have already given the weightage 40%, 60% weightage, and we have a conclusion because this is not something related to issue which requires a way forward, right? Done? Okay. Coming back, right? So now you devise a skeletal structure, you devise a framework that is best suited for the given answer structure, right? And then see, as I said, there is one structure is also there. Explore how many structures. As we have discussed in the introduction, there are 3 to 4 ways of introducing your answer. Given you decide which is the most appropriate. In the same way, there is a structure also. You can come up with like different sort of structure. You devise which is the most appropriate structure, which is completely addressing the demand of the question. You should be within the confines of the question demand, and you should not deviate anywhere. This is the primary thing. Content comes secondary, because ultimately many students have this habit of vomiting content, because the moment they look at the topic which is very familiar to them, it's not like that. You know the content good, but it has to be filled in within the demand or within the framework as desired by the examiner, right? Okay, so answer framework is, as I said, it's like a flow chart of every subheading. So main subheading is there, just try to link, and you can write next to the question only. So when you're in the question paper, you write the flow chart which is going to happen like probably like around 10-15 seconds, you can finish it off, right? So you write the flow chart of every subheading intended to be written as the mains answer, or link. It acts as a link between how the answer should progress from introduction to body to again subbody, right? Again to the conclusion, right? Now go through the question given carefully in detail and make short notes. Short note means this is called as brainstorming phase, where you have random information. Try to jot down and try to fill it where it is appropriate or suitable as per the structure you devised earlier, right? That is the next stage, right? This is the brainstorming phase, where you garner all the ideas which you get, all the content which you have, and try to fill it with the appropriate body part or next to the appropriate structure. Done? Okay. Moving on to the next part, right? And for your information, when any evaluator or the examiner in UPSC or anywhere or KPSC, when they're evaluating, they are going to follow certain parameters in your answer rating. That means they will assess you, how is your understanding, how is your content, how is your conceptual clarity, whether the content you have written is relevant or not, or even the content which you have written is properly organized or not. Every parameters is going to be observed. For your information, any GS question is consisting of more than 12 parameters. The parameters may be even more. Right? When it comes to ethics case study or essay, the parameters are even more, right? But these are the basic parameters which I felt that which is commonly looked into any answers, and so many years of evaluation and guiding students have actually given me this knowledge, right? So first and foremost thing, understanding the core demand of the question, right? That is called as clarity of thought. That means you have understood the question correctly, you have devised the right structure, and you are addressing the answer, the question in the right direction with using proper content. That is called as your clarity of thought. So your understanding should be like in these 2 categories, or maybe even in the average category also, it's fine. But it should not be poor or bad. Poor or bad will attract, as you said, like there is no marking or maybe even negative marking. Let us not focus on negative marking, but you will definitely end up getting very less marks or probably zero, right? Your understanding about the demand of question should be excellent. As I said, if you follow certain terms, what we have discussed earlier, if you follow that rule, it is going to be easy for you to end up being excellent or having good understanding about the demand of the question. Identifying the keywords, we already discussed that you should identify, you should have a clear-cut understanding as to what are the means, what are the ends, what are the tools, what are the objectives, right? So next, identifying subparts. I should be like in this category, giving weightage to each and every subpart, designing appropriate structure. This is most important. For this, all these three will actually act as an input. All the three is going to act as a input or some sort of a information for coming up with the appropriate structure, because that gives you complete clarity, right? Then comes your conceptual clarity. You have devised a structure, you know what is the demand of the question, but you don't know much about the concept. That means you are writing very general answer. Is it going to get you good marks? Not really. It is not going to get you good marks. So therefore, despite having good understanding about the question, you should also be very much aware about what is the concept and how much clear are you about, how much depth of understanding you are with respect to that concept. Okay. So one is conceptual clarity should be good. Then content relevance. When you are presenting any content, you have conceptual understanding is good, but it is so much bulked up, you don't know what to present, and you end up writing something not so relevant, then it becomes completely irrelevant. So therefore, while writing answer, make sure that the most obvious one or the most important points had to be written first, then after which it should be followed by not so important points. The chronology should be from most important to least important. That is called as content relevance. And this content, whatever is written, should be within the confines of the demand of the question. It should not deviate anywhere, right? Next, answer presentation. Answer presentation is important. In answer presentation, the language what you write, right, and the way you're going to present your answer in the passage format or in the bullet point format, or probably using a flow chart or maybe a diagram or use of maps. Everything matters in answer presentation. Answer presentation is going to support your structure. As long as you have good conceptual understanding, clarity of thought, despite that you don't know how to present your answer, you have a very shabby writing, you're not writing the answers in straight lines, right? You need, and you do a lot of scribbling, your presentation is going to be worst. So make sure that if at all you have that good content understanding also, it should be presented in a proper manner. It should be really eye-catchy or like pleasant to the reader, right? So then comes your objectivity. This is happening in ethics also, where people end up being more subjective. If you have any issue, something, usually the question is focused upon asking your opinion. Many times you have come across these questions where they'll ask you, do you agree? As per your opinion, what do you suggest? Right? So opinion based questions are only here to test your objectivity. Objectivity means how much biased you are, or are you analyzing the things without having a subjective bias, right? Objectivity is most important in your mains answer writing. You should not be in the extremes. You should try to follow the mid path. Try to have a balance, right? Objectivity is also should be maintained in your answer writing. You cannot write extreme answers, because you're going to be part of the system, part of the government. You cannot criticize the government. You are having the liberty or the right to identify what are the mistakes are there and try to provide some sort of a plausible or like a workable solution to that. That is what is expected out of you. So therefore, objectivity matters most in answer writing. Then organization of points, as I said, from the major points to minor points. From major to minor points. If you are writing 5 points and you are writing something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the most important point is written in the third, right? And the minor point is written in the first. So that means the answer cannot be like this. Answer writing should go from 0 to, the graph should go high only. That means that is how you engage the reader. Most important points to the least important, and everything is interlinked, interconnected together, and you are maintaining a flow. Flow is also important in the organization point. Flow or coherence. So coherence is important. That means, and this is very much important when it comes to essay answer writing. In essays, many times what happens, you are writing one passage and ultimately one or two ideas is only conveyed in that, and from one passage to another passage, how are you trying to establish an organic link, and how this link is completely confined, it is confined within the demand of the question, and how it is addressing what is expected out of you, and how much of diversity you can bring in your thought process, right? But everything is actually revolving around a core idea, right? It can be for or it can be against, but ultimately it is not deviating anywhere, right? So that is why this sort of flow or coherence is maintained by properly organizing or arranging your points. That is most important. Then comes your language. As I said in the presentation, language, proper language is important. Good vocabulary is simple vocabulary. It's not exceptional language is not expected out of you, but you should be in a position to present your view in a simple language which is can be easily understandable. So you should have proper font size, handwriting also. Don't do scribbling. That is a very bad presentation, right? And if possible, how much of flowcharts or maps or tables. When it comes to geography, mapping is a must. You have to write some maps and present it. And when it comes to any data or statistics, you try to provide a flowchart or probably a bar chart or a pie chart that is going to really support your arguments or your answer. Next, maintaining coherence and flow, we already discussed, and ultimately following whatever the instruction given by UPSC or KPSC. When they ask you to do not write anything outside the margins, do not write. In UPSC, it is going to be penalized, right? Many times what happens, will even, if this is how the answer transcript look, and if the margins are clearly given, do not write anything outside margin. Don't write even 1, 2, 3, 4 also. Don't write that. Just follow the instruction, whatever is given in the front page of your answer booklet, right? That is the best way of scoring good marks. Done? Shall we move forward, right? Okay. So hopefully you understood. These are all the small nuances, but the thing is, you may ignore all those things, but the people who are evaluating your copy will follow all these parameters. So it is better that you also inculcate a habit where you try to subconsciously or unconsciously use these parameters. With practice, it is going to come, and try to make your answer the most appropriate and the most technical, and the probability of you scoring more marks is even better. Okay. Next, as we have discussed, like in answer writing, most important is, right, after during the answer writing. First is like before answer writing. The second is during answer writing. The first and foremost important is introduction. First impression is the best impression, and whatever the content or the materials you're going to write in the introduction is going to be the first impression you're going to create in the eyes of a evaluator. Like, how can you introduce? As I said, you can introduce any topic by simply defining the core terms or the basic terms which are there in the prescribed in the given question. Fine. You have 20 questions in a GS paper. You don't follow the same pattern in every of the answer. I've seen many of the students writing the same introduction, body, conclusion, always trying to only define the core term and moving on with the body. That is not going to get you good marks, or it is not going to bring diversity in your answer writing. So what is most important is that you try to mix different ways of presenting your answer or introducing your answer, either by defining the key terms or providing a context or a background, right? Or probably bringing some sort of a statistics or a data reports. As for example, we have this pollution we have this so many statistics are there. Maybe a Mother Gadil Committee report, or maybe Law Commission report, or maybe Air Quality Index report. So you just try to bring in some reports, and with that you try to link the core demand of the question to you're trying to garner the attention of the examiner by raising an issue and stating the facts, right? So you can introduce your question, your answer by either giving the statistics reports or research or data of RBI or World Bank or maybe WHO, anything, right? And if possible, especially this happens with essays, you can bring in an allegory or an anecdote or a quote. For example, there is one allegory of cave of Plato, where he tries to say that what is the difference between the true knowledge and the partial knowledge, right? So that allegory of cave can be brought in, and or you can also bring in some sort of allegory which is very mostly corresponding to the core demand of the question. This can be particularly used in your essays, but it can also be used in your other GS papers, especially your ethics paper. You can bring this sort of allegory or sort of anecdotes which is most suitable for the core demand of the question. Remember that core demand of the question should not be missed, and any example you are going to provide should be completely corresponding or should be in tune with that core demand, right? Okay, so or you can also narrate a fictional story. Fictional story, I would ask you to like avoid it, because that is not going to get you good marks. You may be having understanding about, probably have read about some most important personalities and stories like Mahatma Gandhi ji or APJ Abdul Kalam or Rabindranath Tagore or Subhash Chandra Bose. Try to bring the stories. It is going to be most authentic in your answer writing. Okay, and essays particularly, as I said, when you are introducing an essay, it is expected of you to at least explain to the reader as to what is after. You can provide with a story, right? And after that, you conclude by arriving at something known as like, you address the demand of the question, or you explain what is the demand of the essay by concluding that story, whatever you have narrated, right? So after that, it is expected of you whether you can write a thesis statement. What is thesis statement? You're going to discuss in brief about what am I going to discuss in these essays, like an index of a textbook, like chapter wise are there. You can give an index, or you can you can provide a for example thesis statement, or at least minimum thing is expected of you is that you need to explain the core demand or the core meaning of an essay, and what are its demand or what is going to be its focus, right? Okay, and in 10 marker, an ideal introduction should be within 5 lines. I think if you are having more content to express in, make it 2 paragraph, probably 3 lines, so that would be sufficient for introduction, right? So 10 markers, it is 3 to 5 lines, which is ideal for introduction. For 15 marker, it is 5 to 6 lines, and in essay it is around 6 to 8 lines would be an ideal passage length. Do not exceed that. Do not write like 10 lines or 20 lines for an introduction. Make it crisp, and as per the number, as per the marking, if it is 10 marker, 15 marker, please follow this rule. It is going to be useful to you. Okay, if you have more to say, break it into 2 passages, right? Introduction is done. Now moving on to the body. As we have discussed, what is structure? You understand what is the structure, right? Structure is the format which is most ideal to fit the demand of the question. You have already devised that structure while reading the question. Now please follow that. You have a structure in front of you, and you have also brainstorm. If at all you have brainstorm, it is good. If at all you don't have the brainstorm, but you know the focus. You know that what I have to write under a particular subheading. Use subheadings. Subheadings are going to be much more useful to you rather than only writing passage, especially 10 marker, 15 marker. Under a passage, under subheading, you can write either point wise, right? Or you can use a flow chart, or you can use a diagram, anything you can use. Right? That is left to you. Okay, na? Right? Next, how many possible structures can be devised? We have already discussed. The structure, what you devise, and the content you present should be in consonance with the total demand of the question. It should not deviate. You have presented a good structure, but the content, if it is not aligning with the demand or even to the structure, it is not going to be useful, and it has to be arranged properly in a chronology order. Right? So next, after writing that, you need to verify whether your answers are having, as I said, make sure that whether your answers are having an introduction, body, a way forward, or conclusion. Way forward is given to issues, right? Conclusion is given to certain sort of questions. For example, explain. For example, discuss. For example, describe. These sort of questions require a conclusion, right? Suitable subheadings are important, because the subheadings gives complete direction to a reader that this person is having a proper understanding or not. That subheading act as a pointers or a milestones where they can point this, at least link these pointers, and you can arrive at a broader understanding of a student. So making them comfortable that you have understood the demand of the question, or whether you're not, that is left to you. Okay, so that subheadings act as a pointers. Okay. Next, whether the subparts are addressed or not, you need to address sufficiently with the proper weightage, because most of the times what happens, the core demand, which requires 60-70% of weightage, is completely ignored, and the not so relevant part is completely explained in an answer. That is called as mismanagement of your content, of whatever the opportunity given to you by UPSC or KPSC. Please be aware that you need to be aware completely how much of weightage should be given to each part, and all the subparts are sufficiently addressed. So for that, planning is important. Therefore, pre-answer writing, that 1 minute, 1.5 minutes is very much crucial to you, where you can bring in all these things and they can provide a scientifically devised answer. Okay. Next, if possible, try to underline or highlight the most important points and even the subheadings also. If you are able to do that, many times what happens, the examiner is going to only focus on the underlined points what you have done, and by connecting all those points, he or she can logically derive at what you are trying to say in that answer. So that means that gives them the complete idea as to how much clear you are about your understanding or the demand of the question, how simply you are able to convey it to you. Okay, so try to highlight that. That is going to be an extra edge. And especially you need to mention when you are writing an essay. Many times what happens, we only write the essay number and write. Try to write the essay title, try to box it, or try to underline. Then you start your essay. That is going to be most appropriate. Okay, and you need to write the introduction, conclusion in your answers. And most of the people, many times what happens, they'll write introduction or they'll write conclusion before in their answers. There is no necessity. It is self-evident that if you are writing a passage, you are trying to introduce about the topic, or when you are concluding something, there's something after the content, your closing statement, that is your conclusion. You don't have to write the subheading as introduction or a conclusion. Don't use those words. It is self-evident. Don't write. And apart from that, avoid writing. There are certain people who usually have the practice of writing how much of time they have taken to write a particular answer and all. Don't write that. That is not really a good habit. It is not appreciated in either KPSC or UPSC. Okay, content. As I said, structure is most important. Content is secondary, but at the same time, content, though secondary, it is not the least concerned one. This is the most important, because ultimately you can write a very general answer. We have good understanding about the demand of question, the structure is good, but what you are going to fill in matters the most. Are you integrating the content with the contemporary examples, or whatever that shows the gamut of your knowledge, right? This is where you have to showcase your knowledge, whatever you have studied, what you have learned. Try to explain that, try to fit in your argument. You have a particular argument, you have sufficient examples, try to bring in that content, and content should be most authentic, most appropriate for static subjects. You have to not miss, like for a particular question, there is some expectation that at least 4 to 5 points, they are the core points that should not be missed. Bring in those content. And if it is dynamic subject like paper 2, paper 3, try to bring in the most current oriented examples. The content is also important because it has to be relevant, it has to be suitable to present, right? Next, you have to see that whether the content consists of a specific or general point. Do not write general answer. Many people have the habit of repeating the question in the introduction only. That is really a bad way of writing answer. Do not follow this method. You have to be more specific and you have to be more technical, and don't be general. Something like, for example, you talk about corruption. There is too much of corruption in India. You don't support your argument with sufficient statistics. Provide statistics or a data report. It is going to give weightage to your answer, right? So next, are the arguments supported with the relevant examples or not? Supported with the examples or data, right? Whether important points or the general you covered, are they specific or general? Always make sure that it has to be specific. Do not write general answers, because all those who are writing mains have some understanding and they'll write this minimum level of answers, which is considered to be a very general way of writing answers. Do not write that. Please avoid it. Next, whether the priority is given to the major points. As I said, chronology is to be important. Maintain the chronology, and these certain expected points should be written, because that holistically addresses the demand of the question. These points are must and should. Not miss those points. And are they following the chronology based on the importance we already discussed? Avoid repetition of the same points. Many people do that. Many students do that. Somewhere they have used the same idea or a point in introduction. They'll continue the same thing in body. The commonly observed this is, for example, when you talk about the advantages and disadvantages. They'll write certain advantages, and in disadvantages they're going to completely write the opposite of that. That is poor way of writing answer. Do not repeat those points. Bring in fresh ideas. Bring in something which is very acceptable, right? And any current dynamics are provided or not. That is most important. You have to provide the current dynamics. You have to provide contemporary examples. That is going to be more crucial, right? And try to link it with other disciplines also. If it is linked, that is really good. And try to bring in the content or areas from the diversified areas. And do not follow this pestle approach in essay writing, especially. Pestle means from the political point of view, economic point of view, social point of view, technological. All you're trying to do is that there is one idea and you're only giving examples. Try to bring in more ideas, right? And if you're writing technical or specific, for example, diversified content, that means you should have an understanding about other areas also, where the examples can be appropriately used to fill in the demand of the question, right? Okay. Next is a presentation. As I said, how the answer is presented. Either, see, most of the students have the habit of writing only passage-wise. And if you're writing all the 20 answers in the same format, introduction, body, conclusion, introduction, body, conclusion, what is the point? Presentation is something which is going to attract the examiner. in one answer, use a passage format. In another answer, especially if you don't have time, use subheading, use bullet points, right? So you can either use a bullet point. So you can, this can be like, for example, introduction, body, conclusion. Then we have again introduction. Then we have a subheading. Under that we have bullet points, right? Or you can also write under a subheading. Probably you can also present your points like this. Okay. Try to bring in some sort of charts or like pie charts or maps. This is going to add muscle into your answer writing. Presentation is most crucial. How are you presenting your answer in a very appeasing manner, and do not scribble. That involves your language, handwriting and everything, right? So see whether the answer presented is in simple and convincing language. You don't need exceptional language. You don't just only need simple language, but it is very confusing, and avoid the confusing language. Beating around the bush, we say. Do not do that. Because ultimately, end of one passage, you're trying to only convey one idea. You're exceeding your word limit. Try to be smart. Do the smart work. Okay. So whether the points are organized or not, that is presentation. Whether there is coherence, as I said, the flow, interconnectedness between one point and another point, and ultimately everything. This is within the confines of the demand of the question. Whatever the points you write should be like linearly linked. Right, so that thought of interconnectedness is called as coherence and flow. Right, interconnectedness is maintained, and whether they are enriching your presentation or not. Like for example, diagrams, flowcharts, maps, photographs. Photographs is pictographs, like whatever you can present. Right. So that is going to completely enrich your answer, and ultimately, where are the passages congested or spacious? You should have sufficient interline spacage, and do not cram or do not try to exceed the word limit. So exceeding the word limit is not good, right? So are you convinced, or there are any other areas of improvement? When you are done, you can ultimately end your answers with a very good presentation. Presentation is crucial, as it is also as important as your content as well as your structure. Okay, moving on to the last part, that is way forward. So you need to understand that to which questions the way forward has to be presented. Way forward is always presented to those questions which are mostly issue based. For example, if you talk about black money, you talk about parallel economy, that is something issue based. You talk about cyber crime, you talk about women empowerment, you talk about something known as domestic violence, you talk about environment issues. These are the issues which requires a broader observation, and there has to be always a positive way forward, because we have sufficiently discussed about the positives, negatives, most important negatives we have discussed. After discussing the negatives, you have to present a way forward, and once you have presented the way forward, there is no need for you to conclude your answer. Way forward is always confined with those questions which are having burning issues, right? So which are like affecting the society, or maybe a polity of a country, or international international issues are there, any war going on, or any cold war sort of thing, or a battle thing. You need to focus on those burning issues, or probably something related to energy crisis. Focus on those. So any burning issues, if it is presented in the question, a way forward is expected, or a problem or any specific area which is asking your opinion. Opinion based question will also have a way forward, right? So if the question is highlighting a challenge, any challenges which is faced to the nation, either societally, politically, economically or environmentally, you have to address that with a way forward, and it is acting like a measure to adopt. So what are the measures you are adopting, any critical situation to overcome, and what can be done which is better than the given whatever the way forward, whatever the solution you provided, it can be even better, probably something like a culmination of whatever your observation done in the answer, right? Next, so would be better if supported with tangible arguments. So way forward is always to be written carefully, right? When you're writing way forward, it should not be like, especially ethics, it should not be overtly ethical. It should be pragmatic also. That means make sure that you balance it and support with tangible arguments, pragmatic, practical arguments, with examples, if possible, taken from the findings of any committee. You can end this by saying that as per this Law Commission report, as per the observation of this Western Ghats Empowerment Panel, right? As per the guidelines of Supreme Court, as per the guidelines of the RBI. You find out the language or the text of these articles, and you can present it in the form of way forward, because the government of those articles or those reports which the government has not actually taken any action, right? So you can present as a way forward. Done? So moving on to the next one, right? So finally, conclusion. So conclusion, how are you going to conclude your answer? There are many ways of concluding answer. One is you either write the summary of what you have discussed in your answer. That is one way of concluding answer. Write a summary of it. Okay. Second, you have the core idea, right? So based on the core idea, something like futuristic, which is very most optimistic, not even negative, provide an optimistic point of view about the core demand, especially if it is issue based, right? A futuristic approach is expected. Third, as in the way forward, conclude with probably a statement or a research report or a committee report. That is going to be ideal, right? Ultimately, it should be like based on your broader analysis of whatever the answers you have written. So it should be based on that shows your broader understanding of your answer, and ultimately you have completely shrunk the broader issue into a smaller one and provided with a simple conclusion, right? And it should comply on addressing the original demand. It should not be away from the demand. It can be a futuristic approach, or it can be a brief positive note which could address the given issue, or maybe you can end with a couplet or a quote in the closing statement, or you can also include a measure or opinion, right? This is how you have to devise your answer writing. Answer writing skill is not simple, it is technical. You need to practice. As I said, we have like more than 12 parameters, 14 parameters are there, and everything has to be scientifically followed. If you are going to follow all these methods in answer writing, don't worry about how much you're going to get in prelims. You only have to qualify. Whatever you're going to score, especially the KPSC students, like, because 98% of your selection comes from whatever you're scoring in your mains. So therefore, enhance your answer writing skills. And for the KPSC students, please join Astra. Please join Astra, because ultimately our objective is to make sure that we have to train you technically, right? So these are the additional information. Additional information means you should always confine your answer within the word limit. If it is 150 words, make sure that 150 can be more than probably 5-10 words, not more than like probably 20-30 words is exceeding that. So do not exceed that much. And even the 250 words also, do not write 350 words or 400 words. You can go up to 260 to a worst case scenario 265, but make sure that you confine your answer within the word limit. Even on the lower side also, it should not be less. It should be like optimal, right? Next, do not write beyond the margins. As I said, instructions have to be followed, because you will be penalized if you are writing anything outside the margins, right? Maintain neat handwriting. Try to attempt all the questions. Please use stopwatch method, because when you're practicing, use stopwatch and see in how many minutes you can able to read the question, devise the structure, and the pre-answer writing process is there, the practice is there. Then you write the answer and see in how many minutes you will be able to write an effective answer. So manage your time, attempt all questions, manage your time judiciously, right? Do not write anything. This is some of the habits which we see in particularly KPSC, that they will write their sob story. This is my last attempt, please. I have a blind father, something like I have a unmarried sister. Don't write your sob stories, right? It is not meant to, it's not a platform to get sympathy. This is a platform where you actually gain what you deserve, right? So enhance yourself, enhance your answer writing skills, and you can become. And some people have this habit of writing the religious, like Om Shri, Om Namah Shivaya, 786, something like that. God help me, God's grace. Don't write all those things in your answer, right? Avoid frequent scribbling. Neat handwriting and a neat presentation is very much important. Writing straight lines. Do not make, most importantly, factual or conceptual errors. Do not write. If you don't know, leave it. But do not make a factual or a conceptual error. Try to use flowchart, maps and tables, charts, diagrams, etc. It is going to be useful to you. So hopefully whatever the brief information we have provided regarding certain tenets you need to follow in answer writing, I think it has been, you find it really useful. The Kannada version of this is going to be discussed sooner, and for further information you have this phone numbers. Please contact us and you can seek any guidance from us. Thank you so much. Keep watching. In the future videos we're going to inform you more about technical answer writing. Thank you so much.